So, thank you for joining us on the Balanced Mind podcast, where we're talking about your outer world meeting your inner world and making the changes that help with the success. Joining me, as always, is our Richard Brewin, our font of all knowledge from the accountancy side, and me, Kim Searle, who talks about the inner world of mindset. Today, we're talking about addressing the fear of failure. I know from my own experience talking to people that there's a lot of things that will be going on that are behaviours that have been put in place to protect them, maybe a way of thinking that's been brought about to avoid any pain or failure. So it'll be a really interesting conversation and right up my street, if you don't mind me saying. Hello and welcome, Richard. Good to talk to you.
Hi, Kim. Made me smile that we're going to talk about the fear of failure, and you introduced me as the font of all knowledge. So thanks for that. That's a great setup, isn't it?
Yeah. You
Guarantee
are.
now, people, there will be a failure at some point in the next 30 minutes.
But you know what? The font of all knowledge had to go through some failures and not sures and whatever to get to where they are. And they're always developing it and growing it. It's a font, so there's always more going in. So I apologize. You're right. Just set you up
It's a
for
good point
failure.
because it's one of those things that the older you get, the easier you find it to deal with. Yeah.
Mm.
Which is, and that's the same with a lot of things in life, isn't it? How many times do we think, oh, I wish I knew, I knew this 40 years ago, life would have been different. But it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know what brings that about, whether it's, obviously you have a lot more experiences to build upon, but yeah, older people seem to be less worried about how they're perceived and less worried about what other people, whether they make a mistake or not, what other people think of them. They just go, well, look, this is me, and I'm going to say what I think, and it's up to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that's probably that's the lesson that I've always grabbed hold of. Once I started to realise that I was getting older, and I'm going to, we all refuse to accept the fact we are, but once you realise it, you're getting older, you think actually that is the lesson that you can take back to your, when people say, well, what would you tell your 16-year-old self or your 25-year-old self and the rest of it? And I've always thought, well, I haven't got a clue. I didn't know then, and I don't know now. But I think it would be that. It's this thing about just, you talk like that. Be yourself. To be yourself, you've got to understand yourself. And I think when we're younger, we don't take the time to understand ourselves. And especially in
We're
this.
not encouraged to, though, are
Well, we're
we?
not. No, and in the world we're in today with social media and all the rest of it, we constantly are judging ourselves against others. And
Yeah.
actually, and that's, I think, this fear of failure is like, well, they can do it and I can't. This one of the things that I'm really heartened by at the moment. We're in the middle of um, the Olympics at the moment, the Paris Olympics, and we've had a number of British medal hopes who've not quite achieved the goal they set out to achieve. And you expect them to be disappointed when they come back to the interviews and all the rest of it, and they are. But what has stuck me in my mind in 2, 3 occasions is, yes, my ambition for the last 4 years was to win the gold, and I've not won the gold, so yes, I'm disappointed. But I can't be too disappointed because I know I've done the best I could. I've run a personal best, or I've lifted a weight I've never lifted. There's nothing more. I've been beaten by a better person. Hey, that happens. I'm now going to get down and win it in 4 years' time. And I think they could just go, oh, I'm a failure. It's not worked out. I didn't do it. I've been beaten. They don't look at the circumstances. And I think that my parents always used to say to me, just do your best. And teachers would say to you, just do your best. And actually, that's what it's about, because you can't do anything more. And if that results in failure, you go, okay, well, I've done my best. Now, what do I learn from that so that I can do better next time? I think it's only the only problem if we look at ourselves and go, well, did you do your best? That's the thing.
Yeah. That is a very good point, because people who fear failure will invariably say they didn't do their best, even if they did, because they've got some high standard that no one can really meet because of, and and these are just one types of failures, by the way, the perfectionists, their best is never enough. There's always more to do. And I have to be honest, I might well have been one of those. Not perfection, as in the attention to detail, but I was always trying to step up and do better and better. I was thinking the other day, actually, I grew up in a time, or I was working in a time when, you know, women weren't, weren't allowed to have mortgages in the bank until they were 21. It was crazy. And, there were certain expectations of women that we were all going to have children or whatever. I did, but not straight away. But there were certain expectations of women. And I don't know how much of that influenced my thinking, which had already been set. But of course, what it meant was that I tried even harder. And when I moved from banking into the tech world, I was surrounded by all these guys, and I looked at them and I thought, you're just cracking it. You're doing it really, really well. So I've got to try harder to be like them. I didn't have to be like them at all, but I felt like I was failing if I wasn't doing everything I had and more. So I think the fear of failure is multifaceted, is what I'm going to
Mm,
say. And the fear is the real problem, because I think if we can separate fear of failure and separate the fear from the failure, we can then target that in a different way. Because I think in my younger years, I was fearful. I didn't realize, I thought it was stress. And a lot of people listening to this podcast may actually identify with it. I was constantly, you know, trying to do more, do better, get it just right. Listen to what they wanted and try and meet it. So people pleasing. Oh my God, it was horrendous. But the problem with that is that obviously I came across a bit too earnest, and maybe I was doing too good a job, let's not promote her, whatever it was. But it was all coming from this idea of fear that I wasn't good
mm.
enough. I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't being enough. So the failure I was just the byproduct of the fear, if you like. So it was only later I realized it was anxiety.
It's
So
interesting, isn't it? That
always,
it's something that sort of comes from within you,
yeah, it
but
was.
it's been created by external influences.
It
Yeah, I mean,
has.
if you go take the education system that certainly we all went through, it was a pass-fail system. You either passed or
Very
you
binary.
failed. You either
Mm.
did it or you failed. You got that mark or you failed.
Mm.
And I think we've taken that into life. In the accounting profession, we start off with pass-fail exams. We do checklists and sign-offs and reviews where it's either you've either done it or you've failed. I think there is, and an element of that. I think an element of fear of failure is necessary. Because we don't want to fail. We should be trying to do our best to avoid it. I want my airline pilot to have a fear of failure. I want my surgeon to have a fear of failure. Because and as an accountant, as a bookkeeper, we should have a fear of failure in as much as I don't want to fail at this, because that's what's going to drive us more to do our safety checks and to make sure we know our stuff and to make sure that
Right.
we're dealing with things where we've got a degree of experience. We're not just winging it from that point of view. So I think that degree of that fear of failure is good, but it's when it starts to impinge and inhibit our performance and
Yeah, like it
stop
did
us
me,
from,
definitely.
yeah, because hey, we all make mistakes, and and learning from our mistakes is one of the features of being a human, really. So if it gets to the point where we then make a mistake, where we're doing everything to avoid failure, then we're boxing ourselves in, aren't we? And that's
Limiting ourselves in a big way,
you've got
yes.
to be go back to the athletes. They have to be prepared to have a fall. They have to be prepared to go up against someone who's faster than them. You can't just keep beating people who you've always beaten because you can beat them. Because where's the satisfaction? Where's the challenge? Where's the progression in that?
Mm.
It's this. You have to be if a fear of failure is stopping you from coming outside of your comfort zone, then it's going to impinge on your development and your personal um, confidence, and it's you're going to get frustrated with yourself. So
Mm.
that's the bit I think has to be addressed. Um, and externally, that can be helped by working in a team and by having line managers
Yeah,
who go, "Hey, have a go." You know, if you're
yeah.
not, that's where you've got to give people we were talking in the previous episode, weren't we, about team stepping up and all the rest of it. It's the same sort of thing. You've got to give people the space to make mistakes.
That's how we learn. It's
Yes.
it's interesting because when I talk to people about our how we learn, our brain is constantly trying to keep us safe. And of course, it learns from the mistakes we make. Oh, don't do that again. That's not a good thing. And, oh, that's really good. Keep repeating that. That's how the brain learns because what's safe and what isn't. We don't tell a child off if they don't learn to walk the first time, do we? We don't sort of, give them a hard time if they're cycling and they fall off. We don't. We're there for them. And I think we need to be kinder to ourselves regarding the failure. There's Edison and his top was it Edison and the light bulb? He did however many times he did to keep trying to get the light bulb to work, and there was thousands of iterations before he finally got there. If he'd given up, where might we be? I'm sure somebody would have done
Mm.
the light bulb, but it's that sort of thing. It's understanding, it's a learning thing, and that's all it is.
It's interesting what you say there because I mean, I'm no psychologist or human behaviorist, anything like that. But in my simple mind, I have always taken the view that the period when we learn quickest and most in our lives is when we're a baby and we're moving up
We
through
do.
being a toddler.
Mm.
Because try learning the language now when you're in your 60s compared to when you're a few months old and you're picking up words all over. So I think part of that is because we know that toddlers have no fear of failure.
No.
They will just run into anything. Because they want to. They want to learn. They want to experience. That it's the whole thing is a learning experience for them. An element of learn. When they run and they burn a finger or they scrape a knee, then they're stuck. That's a part of the learning process.
It
They've
is
made a
part of
mistake
the
and they
learning
learn from
process,
that.
yeah.
And hopefully, eventually, you've got a toddler who realizes that's not a good thing to do. But as adults, we almost like we do it a step before. We go, yeah, but what if I did hurt my finger? What if I did hurt my knee?
Mm,
I won't do it. Well, what if you didn't? What if it worked? What if you
yeah.
enjoyed it? It's that we've got to question sometimes, why do we really want to live within our comfort zone all the time? I think that's what a lot of this comes down to. You and I have both set up our own businesses in the past. It's why we do what we do now. Well, we did. Yes, you go through this. Okay, well, this is scary. What if it doesn't work? But the drivers for why you did do it, whether it be in my case, certainly because I just firmly believe there was a better way. And it's like, well, I'm going to do it and I'm going to make it work. And
Yeah.
and if I remember saying at the time, if I end up having to clean windows at night, that's what I'm going to do because I'm going to make this work. So the drivers to do it overcame the fear of losing a regular salary and what goes with it. We've sort of got to pull that down. And when we're looking at why we're not doing something because it scares us, we've got to look at, well, hang on, why are we and are we comfortable with that? If we're comfortable with the decision, that's fine. Yeah, it's actually no, I'll stop in this job because it's safer. Okay, if that's what you want to do, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But it's this, we need to sort of be much more aware about why we're saying no to something, why we're avoiding something, why we're resisting something. Sometimes it's a good idea.
Mm.
If there's a cliff edge, yeah, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not, that's not me. But if it's a slope and it looks like a bit of a hard hill and it might be raining halfway up, it's like, well, do you want to go up the hill or not? It's up to you, Richard.
Yeah. All I would say is if it's a cliff edge, have you got on your parachute or whatever it is that you go and get it? You could still do
even
it. So the
even with a
fear
parachute, I
is
ain't doing
just a
that.
message, isn't it? I've only done parasailing once. No, I can't tell you how scared I was of that. But it was exhilarating. So once you can get through it, I mean, I've never read the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I must actually.
Mm,
But the fear is just a message, which is why I was wondering whether we could, let people understand that the fear of the failure, the fear is the biggest part. If you can
yeah,
overcome that, your logical mind can work out what the failure would mean and what can you do about it? It's almost like a risk analysis. I used to do a lot of that in project management. What if this happened, what would I do? Who would be able to help me, and you plan it, and suddenly everything can downgrade, but that fear can actually stop people is that
Mm.
freeze moment where it says, oh no, this is not good, or run away, don't do it. So and the fight is, I'm going to power through the
Yeah.
three phases that will happen when fear comes in, the bodily responses. So that's really useful to understand. So we can separate the fear, and you're right, question it. What's going on there? How is that helping me? What is it doing for me? I do love a how and a what question. If we can do that, you don't have to answer it cognitively. You might not get immediate answers, but it will come to you, because the deeper mind doesn't like an unanswered question, and it will let you know what the problem is. And then you can start to do something about that, because it's an old learning. I said here that, our brain learns what is good for us and what isn't. And it could be faulty learning from that childhood, that
Mm.
teenage time, that young adult, when you're not as worldly wise as you are now. And it may be something big and it may be something small. Either way, it's just a message, and it's trying to get something to you. So it's well worth having a look at that. If you do decide to, listeners, there is an exercise that I can send. It's called the hot pen exercise, a really good one that allows you to communicate with this part of you that's feeling fearful. But yeah, it's just a message. That's all it is. It can just be very uncomfortable.
I mean, you've talked before about the reptilian mind, and
Yes,
yeah, and
exactly.
this ancient part of us where these
Mm,
basic human um, feelings come from, and fear is very
mm.
much part of that, and this flight
Yes,
or
it
fight
is.
thing. And I think that we talked then about understanding that, recognizing that's what's happening at that point in time, and turning it into um, a conscious decision rather than a subconscious reaction. So if
Yeah,
you're feeling that, fear, why? Why am I feeling that fear? What is it that I'm scared of? And
yeah.
what, do I need to do anything about it? You know, it's okay to be scared on occasion.
There's times when
But
it's necessary.
absolutely. But B, if what can I do about it? If oh, yeah, but if I do that and I make a mistake, then I'm going to get fired. Okay, well, let's just look at those different aspects of that. Because first of all, what is it? Why do you think you're going to make a mistake? And is there anything you can do about that? And if you fit, and if if you have that fear of being fired, I guess to some extent, is that a bad thing? But also, okay, so have the conversation. Have the conversation with your line manager. Talk about where you are.
Mm.
Don't just sit there and freeze, because you're not fighting or flighting. You're just the rabbit in headlights. And I think that's when it's at its worst.
It
If you
is.
flip it, if you go, okay, right, I can, let me work out why I'm feeling uncomfortable here. Let me just think about it for a minute and go, okay, what's going on here? Yeah, okay, yeah, I really don't like that client. That client shouts at me every time I talk to them. So, okay, that's the issue here. Not me. Not It's actually not a failing on my part. It's the client. I need to have a conversation with the
Yeah.
manager, for instance. I think there are things that we can do. But, sometimes it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm right to be feared because I've not got a clue what I should be doing. So, yeah, if I dive into something that I don't know what I'm doing, there is a chance I'm going to mess up. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's fix that. But trying to understand why we feel like we do, just taking a minute and going, okay, right, just because I've not done this before doesn't mean to say I can't do it now. Once upon a time I couldn't walk. Once upon a time I couldn't talk.
Yeah. And it's all a learning journey, isn't it?
Mm.
The one thing I would say, I was going to share a story, time allowing, is that depending on the level of fear, could be because it's a spectrum. I always talk about spectrum. So you can have, panic attacks is on the same spectrum as fear. Worry and concern is on the same spectrum as fear, but it's lower down. So it depends where your fear is. Um, it will hijack your cognitive thinking if it's too far up the scale. And it's funny now, it wasn't at the time, but I just want to share my own failure and what I thought that was going to do for me. I was managing a multi-million-pound project, and I was having a look at the numbers because I had to report back because it was coming up to month end. And I was looking at it and I thought, oh my God, I've lost. I think it was, I think it was about £1 million. I can't remember. It was a big number. And I honest to God, felt the whole of my insides fall through the floor as I was looking at this spreadsheet and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Have I overspent? What's going to happen? How's the boss going to handle it? Am I going to be fired? Is the client going to sue us? I was all just not good. And I don't know how I did it, but I walked away from that spreadsheet, I can tell you very quickly. And I did leave it overnight because very often if you leave things overnight, things resolve itself. And I did everything I could with the skills I had even then to bring this fear down, because I'd just gone from 0 to 60 in just like that. Came back the next day, it was a currency exchange. Oh my God. So I had spent the best part of 14 hours really, right off the scale, and it had been a currency exchange. I'd been looking at something that was in sterling and it should have been in dollars. And yeah, it was okay. But what a nightmare. Now there's a fear of failure.
I mean, the
Oh,
thing is, we all, yeah, the listeners on this call as well. My guess is we've all experienced that feeling in the pit of your stomach,
oh,
that where you
just,
suddenly realise what you've done, and it's oh my God. But the reality is, it's done. You've done. Yeah, something's happened. It might
yes.
not be as bad as you think, it might not be, but something's happened. So well, you got to deal with it. That's what this comes down to. You still got to deal with it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
whether that's putting your hand up and going, it was me, or whether it's going back and rechecking calculations, or whether it's,
Yeah.
you know, patching up the window and eyeing somewhere else.
Getting your
Yeah,
P45. Oh
yeah.
no.
It's like yeah. I remember slamming a cricket ball through the window of our conservatory when I was about 9 years old. Yeah, you have to deal with it. It's just, and you can try. It wasn't me. It was my sister, but it doesn't wash.
No.
Um, so it's I'm not should be flippant about these things, but this I think this is why you do deal with this is better when you're older because you know what life is.
Yes.
And sometimes this is life and this is what happens. It's like, okay,
Mm.
right, there's loads of things which we wish hadn't happened, but it
Mm.
has.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? You can sit and just stress about it for the next 14 hours, or you can
Which
go,
I did, yeah.
go do something about it. And it's,
And
you're
I
even more
had all
annoyed
sorts
then.
of plans to get out of it, but there was no getting out of it. But fortunately, I didn't have to. But it just goes to show that sometimes even before this fear of having done something wrong just messed up everything for me for 14. I couldn't even do the work I had to do. It was
Mm,
that bad, it was
mm,
just crazy. So it can hijack you, is where I was going with that. But the failure of it, I mean, I have had failures as well, and you just have to own up and you have to pluck the courage up from somewhere, don't you? Woo, count to 10. Oh, guess what? And I've had some really good managers in the past who've said, okay, well, let's just have a look, like you said, in before, let's have a look, let's talk it through. And yeah, it's been okay, but it's been a challenge, I have to say. But it's okay, as you're right, as you get older, it's
yeah,
okay, because the failures, and the bigger the failure, let me tell you, the more you learn and faster we learn. If you go through a really difficult patch, do we not learn and become somebody else who's even better? Do, don't we? So I guess what I'm saying, Richard, here is that fear is just a message. It's something that's coming from your deeper reptilian mind to say, hello, something's not right. You're in danger. You're going to get hurt in some way. But of course, in our modern world, most of that, particularly in the workplace, is more a fear of failure or not being good enough, not being important, putting your head above that parapet so that you're going to be shot with criticism and judgment. Those tend to be the fears that we face. And why is that important? Because the brain is trying to keep you alive and safe. And if you're not part of something, then you're on the outside and more likely in danger of death, which is the old way. The reptilian brain isn't in the 21st century. I don't even know which century it would be in if we were looking at time, minus 100,000, maybe. I don't know. But it is worth noting from my own experience and something that I have seen in people I've worked with as well, that you cannot be logical and emotional at the same time. Now, I'm not talking some level of emotion, but when it starts to become more extreme, the mind body takes over and your logic has no energy to be able to do what it needs to, because everything is on focused on you running, freezing, or coming back fighting. You're at risk. So just understand, I think, is what I'm saying, is the fear is just telling us there's something to learn here. And as long as we can learn through good experiences, ideally by planning, by preparing, by learning some knowledge, finding out from other people how to do it, I think we can keep that whole feeling much smaller.
Yeah, I think from from the accountant's perspective, look, fear is a good thing. We're fearful of things for a reason. And I think if we recognize that, when we feel that fear, it's almost like it's an alert. It's a fire alarm going off. I think what we've then got, when the fire alarm goes off, the first thing we do is, okay, is this a real fire or not? Was I expecting it or not? If it's a real fire, let's get out of the building. If it's just a test, let's work out a way of moving
Yeah.
forward. And I think it's almost that sort of approach. When we get that sense of fear, is this something to be really frightened of? Do I need to up all my levels of alert, or actually is it me reacting to something? In which case, we have to be prepared to fail. It's as simple as that. That's how we move the business forward. We all make mistakes. We all get things wrong. We all have things that happen that we wish they hadn't happened. Just let's go back to vision, go back to goals, go back to what we're still trying to achieve here.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's interesting because our next podcast is actually addressing that part of things. We have to be prepared to fail. What we're talking about next in the next podcast is how to handle mistakes. And it's that sort of thing. Oh, it's happened. Now what do I do? So, it'll be interesting to see where we take that one, I think.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Be good.
Fantastic. So we're bringing this to an end then, this podcast. If you've got any questions, please do reach out to either Richard or and in the meantime, it's goodbye from me.
Good night. Bye.
Hey, fantastic. Thank you.